Doctor Who is back on our TV screens. The 13th Doctor and the fam are on more adventures, the Master has returned, Gallifrey has exploded, and we have a little brief trip back in time to World Wars, and of course the 1800s. What is not to like? Join me as I take a look at Doctor Who Spyfall Part 1 and 2. As I am incredibly shattered, this entire review is going to be entirely strong coffee induced. Welcome to the Horse Productions. Hello everybody, I hope you are all well and welcome back to a brand new series of reviews on the Horse Productions. As in today's video, I am of course going to be starting my episode reviews for the latest series of Doctor Who, which is of course Series 12, starring the 13th Doctor as portrayed by Jodie Whittaker alongside the notorious fam. Of course, we have a brand new series of a whole 10 episodes of Doctor Who to look forward to in the early half of 2020, which did of course air on our TV screens starting on New Year's Day, in fact, January 1st, 2020. At the current time of filming, it is now the 17th of January 2020, so as per usual when it comes to the new series of Doctor Who, a few things cropped up in the early few episodes, meaning that I've had a delay in doing these episode reviews, and this time round it was in fact university exams. For the past few weeks I have been on essentially YouTube leave. I've not been doing any reviews, although some videos have been pre-filmed that have been going up in the meantime, so I could focus on essentially what is more important, being my education and my degree, and hopefully essentially becoming a lawyer. Who knows? But yeah, I'm finally out of those exams now. I've got a presentation or two left next week. However, that does of course mean I finally have time to catch up on the new series of Doctor Who, because this time round I've not watched any of the episodes so far on broadcast, which is very rare for me. However, I'm an adult now, so you know, life starts to get a bit depressing at this stage, and you start to need to sacrifice the things that you enjoy, which is a little bit of a shame. So today's episode review, I am going to be taking a look at the opening episodes of Doctor Who Series 11, Series 12 even, which is of course Spyfall Part 1 and Spyfall Part 2, as written by Chris Chibnall. Now this is of course an opening story, an opening two-parter, which is lovely to see. I was missing the two-parters within Doctor Who Series 11, and I must admit this story does in fact get the series off to a rather strong start, with a lot of surprises in there as well. Now just as a little bit of a disclaimer before I start this review, because I feel the need to do this every single time I review a TV episode of Doctor Who, because unlike Big Finish and unlike books, it's kind of a niche audience. When you're reviewing the actual TV series, it goes out to a bit of a broader scale of audience. This review will feature my opinions of the story itself and the characters. If your opinion differs from mine, lovely, why not comment it in the comments section below in a respectful manner. I love it when people have differing opinions, because that makes the world exciting. If your opinion does differ from mine, do not be offended, because I will not be offended of your different opinion, and I hope that you will not be offended from mine. So let's be nice in the comments section below, social media in general, and let's just kick off 2020 in a positive, calm manner and be civilised human beings. And I would also just like to add that when I talk about the characters throughout this series of Doctor Who, I do not mean it personally to the actors themselves. I'm sure they are all lovely people, and if I criticise the character within the story, that does not mean that I'm criticising the actual actor, unless I specify that I actually am. However, I assume that all the people who work on Doctor Who are lovely, generous, kind-hearted people that I would love to meet in daily life, because they all seem great. So yeah, I mean it about the characters, not the TV show itself. Great. I'm glad we've got that out of the way. Let's take a look at Spyfall. Had I actually been doing these reviews normally when the episodes have been broadcast, I probably would have done this episode review in two parts for the two actual stories. However, because it's now a few weeks old, I think it's just easier to look at the two episodes as a whole, because it shares the cast pretty much, and it shares the same plot. And I think that this story is a step up. I can remember commenting on Twitter immediately after watching the story. It is a vast step up from Doctor Who Series 11. It is upping the scale of the series, and it makes it feel, as I hate to kind of say, like how it used to be, it makes it feel a bit more like Russell T Davies' era of Doctor Who, where the scale does seem to be a bit grander, and the plot itself does seem to be a bit more experimental and exciting. Delving into the characters first, we have the 13th Doctor. I think that Jodie Whittaker has learnt from a few of the flaws of the previous series. I think that Jodie is a great actor, however, sometimes the scripts do let her down massively. I think that some of the episodes in Series 11 really do show that. However, overall, other episodes, such as, say, Kablam and Rosa, show some sparks within her character, and it is nice to see that this story really grasps those sparks and gives her, in fact, a lot of nice scenes to perform with, and generally she interacts with the cast incredibly well, and we have a nice balance between an alien from out of space, but also a mysterious character at the same time. I particularly love the opening scene where we had her working on the TARDIS. It was nice to return to that more mad scientific-y kind of route, which is something that we didn't really see too much of in Doctor Who Series 11, other than within The Woman Who Fell to Earth, and she's a pleasant incarnation of the Doctor. However, I think there's an interesting development with her character. That is, she's a bit too nice. She's just wanting to get along with her new companions and not really delve into her history, which, as we see throughout this story, this is possibly starting to cause ripples within Ryan, Yaz and Graham, because they are travelling with this character, they don't know who she is, where she's came from, and not really anything about her personally, and that is causing, I think, a little bit of detachment. I think that is possibly due to the previous incarnation being Peter Capaldi, who is a little bit more stern and not really connected to people as much, and he can get along by himself just fine. However, this Doctor is just wanting to embrace adventure, which possibly that is affecting the TARDIS team in a rather negative manner, and it will be nice to see that explored with throughout the rest of the series. Taking a look at the brilliant Bradley Walsh as Graham, he's great as per usual. Some really lovely lines throughout this series, well, this two-part episode even. I think that he's just a lot of fun, he's a warm character, but also at the same time can deliver some rather serious lines. It was nice to have a reference within part 1 to, of course, his previous health, as covered within the previous series ever so slightly, and also him caring for the companions within the TARDIS team. He's a little bit like a fatherly figure. I like the fact that he was kind of referenced to be the Doctor within the early half of the story, because I think he has those traits. He is one of those caring people, as I say, and does share some of the similar sort of characteristics of, say, the 11th Doctor, or maybe even going as far back as William Hartnell, because he's quite grandfatherly in more ways than one, because he is literally to Ryan. However, I just think he's nice, and a really lovely contribution to the TARDIS team. Then we have Mandip Gill as Yaz, which I'm happy to say this, because I was sick of complaining about Yaz in Series 11, I must admit, because I felt like she did nothing at all. I felt like she was just there, and she was a cardboard cutout, and I didn't really remember too much about her character at all, other than a few brief moments, very much like the 13th Doctor, really. This story, I'm so happy to see, has developed her a little bit. We have her doing a few police-esque things, interviewing people, going undercover, and she seems a bit stronger. It kind of feels like this story wouldn't have been the same without her, which is nice, because we didn't have that throughout the previous series, other than in Demons of the Punjab, so it's good to have that development, and I hope it progresses throughout the rest of the series. And Mandip did a really good job, in particular that scene where she comes out of the other dimension, and she was quite taken aback by it. She was quite anxious and distressed over the experience. I really did like that. And then we have Ryan Sinclair as portrayed by Tosin Cole. I think that he was possibly the weaker link within the fan this episode round. He didn't really have too much to do, however, within the later half of part 1 of Spyfall, we did see a little bit more of a stronger relationship forming between him and Yaz, which could that lead to something in the future? Personally, I hope not. I want it to be kept kind of strictly just friends, because I hate that lovey-dovey stuff within Doctor Who. It just distracts everybody. 10 and Rose for one, Clara and 11 for other examples as well. I just think it's easier to focus on the characters as independent people that are friends. And yeah, I think it was alright. Once again, I liked him. However, this series I want to see him challenged a bit more, because we need that for this character, I think. Now taking a look at the episode itself, because I'm going to talk about the other characters along the way. I must admit, on first experience of Spyfall Part 1, I honestly didn't see why it would appeal to children. I came out of the episode and thought, that was quite heavy-handed narrative-wise. I thought it was quite focused on the MI6 stuff, and the plot itself was quite in-depth. We have these people, these spies, essentially being killed by these space assassins, and the Doctor needs to figure out what is going on and stops them, essentially, which we do of course see within part 2. However, I think the majority of the episode itself, other than the occasional spy sequences such as the car chase, and of course the fun with the car earlier on where they nearly got killed, which was quite dark and a good way to introduce the story, I think other than that, a child or a younger viewer will probably fade out of the story and lose a little bit of interest, which I don't mind too much. I think it would be nice to see the 13th Doctor era going a bit more down an adult route as opposed to a child route. I think that It's just my opinion, but I just think it didn't, as I say, it didn't have that fun, adventurous side, kind of, that the 11th Doctor era had, which I'm not saying that is a criticism, I just think that is mainly what this plot did, in my eyes. It was more focused on the detail and the concept itself, which after Series 11, which what I must admit did have quite a few light and fluffy scripts in there, it's nice to make that move into a more serious storyline that has a few quite serious concepts in there. We do, of course, see the Doctor and the fam, or just the companions, as I will prefer to call them, meet O, as portrayed by Sacha Dhawan, who's a lovely character. He's a lovely and warm, a lovely agent of MI6, which he couldn't hurt a fly, could he? I really love looking back on this story, having now known the reveal at the very end, because you can see a few slight nods in there, such as him knowing the Doctor beforehand, such as him having a history, of course, and researching the Doctor and the incarnations of the Doctor, and of course him mentioning as well to develop an identity online. It must be quite impressive if you can pad it out that detailed, which was of course a reference to, I do believe, the Sim Master in, of course, Series 3, when he made Harold Saxon a real-life identity, which was a quite cool touch. And yeah, the reveal at the very end, which I'm going to get onto now because I want to just talk about it because it's the biggest moment of the story. It was impressive. I thought it was really impressive. I think that Sacha Dhawan performed it very well, rather theatrical, but still quite cool. And also I could see the evil oozing out of the character, which is what I really like. It kind of was a bit borderline Sim in the mental side of things. However, it was reminding me of the War Master, and in particular the War Master from the Big Finish War Master series, which for those of you that watch my Big Finish reviews, you will know that I adore that series. And that's a huge compliment from me. I think it reminded me of that incarnation because he is scheming, he is evil, and the return of the TCE as well. What is not to like about that? I love the fact that they used the original sound, and it kind of returns the Master back to the roots of the classic series, which is what the Sims Master and the Gomez Master lacked in a lot. And I think that the incarnation change is a bit soon, I must admit. Of course, I didn't expect Missy to come back. Missy is definitely the 12th Doctor's Master, and I wouldn't like to see her with any other Doctor, oddly. I think that they're just paired with each other incredibly well. However, I think that the actual return of the Master as a whole is just too soon. It's been a series since World Enough and Time and the Doctor Falls, and especially the ending that that gave to the Master within that story, I just think that it is too soon. But Sacha Dhawan did a very good job of what he was given, and we got to see that excelled upon within the second half. Of course, we did also get to see Stephen Fry throughout the early half of Spyfall Part 1, which, as per usual, Doctor Who tradition, get a big name, kill them off immediately, which I was actually expecting. Not gonna lie, I thought he did a good job of what was given. Once again, it didn't really pad him out too much. It was a nice way to introduce the narrative of the story in a rather easy to take in manner. Of course, basically spoon-feeding, saying, these things are happening, people are being killed, blah blah blah. And yeah, I like that, it was fun, and I also like that the Doctor was almost acting as a scientific advisor in a way, which, speaking of scientific advisors, we did have Unit and Torchwood referenced, which I thought was very odd, I must admit. Of course, we did have that backlash within Revolution, or Resolution even, about Unit no longer being a thing, which was further referenced within this story in MI6 not knowing that Unit was a thing. And I just think that now 2 episodes in and we're getting you these Unit references, I feel like this has to be leading somewhere. Then we have the reference to Torchwood, which I thought was very interesting. Of course, Torchwood Chibnall did write for that series on a number of occasions, most notably, of course, Cyberwoman, and I think it was odd because Torchwood is an adult show and we don't really get to see it referenced when it was actually on TV within Doctor Who that much anywhere, other than Journey's End directly. But I just thought it was quite a bold choice. Of course, Big Finish now have the licence for Torchwood, and it is nice to see that they're not tampering with that. And I just think that, could it be more than just a reference? I want to say that now in case it does happen, but I think it could be. I think it's going somewhere. I hope it is going somewhere, but I don't know where yet. I just feel like 2 references within 2 stories is intentional, but I don't know why. Also mentioning Segan Akinola, both episodes 1 and episodes 2 have some absolutely phenomenal scores in there. I particularly love the scene where they do, of course, get dressed up, very Bond-esque, and we have them going to the party. Daniel Barton, as portrayed by Lenny Henry, a lot of fun with that score. So I think it is very clear that Segan Akinola had a lot of fun composing the score for this story. I can't wait to see it being released at the end of Series 12. I can't wait to see his rest of his work as well for the rest of the season. I would also just like to mention at this point as well, I didn't mention it at the start of the review, but I'm incredibly tired at the minute, so if I make a few blunders here and there, that is because I'm shattered. I just wanted to get these reviews kind of back up to date and on track as soon as possible, so I will be more awake in future reviews. This is currently a very strong coffee indeed. But yeah, talking about Lenny Henry as Daniel Barton, he's an interesting character, once again very much like the Unit and Torchwood references. I feel like he has potential to go places, and I wouldn't be surprised if he returned in the future of this series, maybe in the Cyberman story, because of course this story does focus on technology, and it would make sense for that maybe to be cyber related if they were going to do a proper 21st century Cyberman episode. And yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. I think he did a very good job. Lenny Henry he's normally quite comedic, I think, but him going into something that is a little bit more serious, especially within episode 2 where we had him killing his mother, which I definitely didn't expect. And speaking out of episode 2, we do of course have the cliffhanger where we have the plane incident, which was quite cool. I didn't quite know how they were going to get out of it, and the key thing that I'd taken from the cliffhanger was that I was excited for the next story, which I've not been excited for Doctor Who airing, rather sadly actually, in quite a while. But since watching Spyfall Part 1 and the concepts that kind of threw up in the air for the next story, I was actually looking forward to it. I was actually waiting to watch the episode and counting down the days for it to air, which I thought was very interesting, and it's nice to see that Chibnall is taking a much more cinematic style and actually grabbing your attention and making you want to tune in the following week, which, not gonna lie, in my personal opinion, Series 11 did not do whatsoever for me, but I did of course watch it anyway because I'm a Doctor Who fan, but I imagine the occasional viewer will probably switch off, and I think that that story, well, episode 2 as a whole, takes a different approach. Once again, we're having a global scale. However, from the historic perspective, we have them of course going back to the 1800s, or we have the Doctor going back at least whilst the rest of her team, I suppose, are plummeting to Earth in a plane that has half exploded, as you do on a daily basis with the Doctor. I love the scene with the Master where she goes back and interacts with the Master historically within that setting with Ada Lovelace, and he once again uses the TCE. I adored that moment where he turned to the woman and said, "Did you just flinch?" and then shrink her down. I thought that was brilliant and ruthless, and something that once again reminds me of the War Master and his evil roots, which we didn't see too much of with Missy. We did on occasion, however it was delivered in a way that was once again comedic and quite overdone. This way it was just serious and bloodthirsty, and I loved that. And I think that the Doctor throughout this story as well, within the ending half of this story, had some great moments. We had a lovely speech from the Doctor, and I think that it worked well with the actual narrative. It showed her overthrowing the Master in a way that was quite respectful and intelligent. However, I couldn't help but feel that the conclusion was very Curse of Fatal Death, which was, I went back in time and bribed the architect, and then I did this with the plane and overdid what you did, and then I went back and did this and overdid what you did then. It's kind of a bit, as I said, timey-wimey, and can be a little bit of a get-out clause, but that said, at the same time, there's not really many other ways that you could have potentially have got out of it without the TARDIS team plummeting to their deaths, which I understand why they did it. Of course, we had Ada within this story, Ada Lovelace, which has appeared on Big Finish before, which I thought was quite unusual. Of course, there's been a few references to other things that could be occurring with this season, and I was wondering if they were going to reference Ada within the Fourth Doctor Adventures. I think Enchantress of Numbers it was called. I have in fact reviewed that story last year as a part, I think, of the Syndicate Master Plan with Anne Kelso as portrayed by Jane Slavin. I was interested to see if they were going to reference that. They didn't, because it was a younger version of Ada Lovelace, and I'm happy to see that she wiped her memory at the end of it as well, which made the way, of course, for the big finish story when she did, of course, meet the Fourth Doctor later on in her life. Of course, Spyfall Part 2 does also contain a second female historical character, being Nor, of course, from the World War within Nazi-occupied France, which was another interesting take for this story. In fact, all of the hopping around in time reminded me of the Doom Coalition 3 box set, where you had River Song in one time zone, you had Liv and Helen in another, and then you had the 8th Doctor off doing his own thing, and you were hopping about history of Earth around Europe, and it was a lot of fun. I sort of got references from that story within this episode. It was a rather nice vibe, and it was once again good to represent the time travel aspect within this story, and it's nice to meet other female characters as well from history after seeing Rosa Parks within the previous season. I kind of feel like Nua wasn't really developed as much as Ada. I think the story was developed around Ada more than Noor, and I think that she had a good input within the story itself. It was nice to see Nazi-occupied France, especially within the Master's kind of context, having him coming in and being the captain of a squad of Nazis, of course, which had some interesting connotations behind it. There was a few additional references within this segment of the story, including Jodrell Bank, of course, which I absolutely loved. I love that little nod, because if you don't know what story that is from, it doesn't particularly matter. However, if you do, it's just a nice little Easter egg and a good acknowledgement to the classic series, so I give bonus points for that. I also give bonus points for the inclusion of Contact. Like, I clapped, not gonna lie. When that happened, I was fangirling for such a nerdy concept of the classic series, but it was great to see that back. The way that they did it, I was half expecting the little da-da-da-da sound from the Three Doctors. Yeah, it's nice to see that concept back. Loved, probably my favourite moment actually of the entire two-part story was the Doctor doing Morse code and the Time Lord heartbeat. I think that the way that direction was used alongside the characters interacting with that, and the music score over the top, having the massive drum beats as she did the tapping of the little sort of nodule thing when they do Morse code. I loved it. It was possibly the best moment of the episode. The good thing about focusing on the 13th Doctor is that so far Series 11 at least has been very focused on the unit of the fam as a team, and taking a look at them and how they work together, and arguably because they're different people it is kind of effective. However, at the same time, I think that we have lost the focus on the Doctor, because at the end of the day it is Doctor Who. They are the main character, and the past season felt like that the others were the main characters. And yes, people do always say that the companions are what the viewers sort of associate themselves with. They are viewing it through their eyes. However, I've never really felt like that. Some people may feel like that, but I'm more interested in the Doctor and how they're being and how cool they're acting and how they're defeating the situation. I never really think, oh Doctor, how are we going to get out of this one? Because at the end of the day, companions are there to kick the narrative on a little bit further. And I think that this episode kind of shows that. The strengths of this story for me were the scenes with the 13th Doctor, and the scenes that let this episode down for me were the ones with Ryan, Yaz and Graham, especially within the second half. I think that it kind of let me down just a little bit, especially given what was done within part one. I think that Chibnall did a brilliant job on developing them within the first part. It felt like they had a bit of their backstory expanded on a little bit, and more importantly, it has developed them within the TARDIS team. Of course, Ryan doing interviewing and photography, Yaz doing the police work, which is finally something that is being acknowledged, and Graham just being his wonderful, brilliant self. He doesn't really need to do anything because he is warm and strong as a character. As it is, he's there to be nice and brilliant. Within part 2, we kind of see them just being used for stupid things. We have them on the run, which is fun, I suppose, a little bit of a last of this Time Lords hark back, I suppose, but at the same time, the stuff with the shoes and the stuff of the phone box and the agents instantly arriving when they rang from that red phone box in the middle of nowhere, it was just all a little bit too much and a bit not hard to believe because it's a science fiction show, but yeah, I just thought that was a bit it kind of took it over a bit and made me appreciate the story less, I suppose. But that said, the scenes of the 13th Doctor made me appreciate this story, and I'm glad that it focused a bit more on the Master and the Doctor together. And then of course mentioning the elephant in the room, all of that Gallifrey shenanigans. What do I think about the Gallifrey stuff? It's Was I expecting it? I knew that the Timeless Child was going to have some form of involvement, as with everybody else on the Earth and their goldfish, because it was something that was referenced, clawed in pretty much in Doctor Who Series 11, and it only really made sense to bring it back in this series. And the Master blowing up Gallifrey, is that possible? Is it a thing? It's in the Pocket Universe and all of that. We'll just need to wait and see. I think that it is very odd that Chibnall's key aim for Series 11 was not needing any context beforehand and not really needing to know anything to experience Doctor Who, which I've never really understood the idea of. I've never understood attracting in a whole new audience, because let's face it, with Doctor Who, the main reason why Doctor Who is still on our TV screens 50 plus years later is because of the fans. If the fans didn't have a close connection with the show and involvement within the show itself, Doctor Who would not be here to this day. It would have ended 10 years in. And I think that introducing a new audience, which was what the key aim of Series 11 was, is just a little bit illogical to me. You should be harking back to the people that are keeping this show going. You should be bringing back the monsters and villains. Yes, it is good to have experimental stuff. Yes, it is good to introduce new monsters. Also provide something for the fans that have already been there for many years as well, to make them want to tune in. And for some reason, Series 11 kind of lacked in that for me. It was kind of not really experimental. It just didn't really do anything. And then this series so far has threw that all out of the window. It's either that Chibnall has done the equivalent of a political U-turn, where he's gone, yeah, we've had absolutely nothing relating to previous Doctor Who, now we're going to go full on niche and do like Virgin New Adventures, Looming, Lung Barrow, and the Fathers of Gallifrey and Gallifreyan history, the type of stuff I expect to see within the Big Finish Gallifrey series, and not actual Doctor Who. I mean, if he does go down that route, brilliant, you're appealing to the classic series fan more than anything, which will no doubt drag in a few of the older viewers that may have faded away at this point. I appreciate it. However, I want to see them take it further. I want to see a decent plot arc and a story that is worthy of a plot arc, which is something that I've not really seen for the past few years. I've been constantly used to, especially the Moffat era of the show, with stories of the likes of Hellbent not delivering. I think that a lot of the Moffat plot arcs didn't really deliver at all. It didn't live up to the hype, and because of that, I'm not a fan of new series plot arcs anymore. Even the RTD plot arcs kind of developed and had a worthy ending, which the ones in the past few years haven't. So I want to see Chibnall do something good with this. Don't just leave it dead in the water. Do something good that is worthy. And that does of course bring to an end this review of Doctor Who Series 12, Episode 1 and Episode 2, which is of course Spyfall. However, before we end off this review, I'm introducing a new category. We have this, the Doctor Who Series 12 ranking. It's got Jodie on in it. That's the Master. Got the TARDIS. I got a star in graphic design, in case you're wondering. This is a thing that I'm going to do. Basically, every episode, I'm going to rank it on... by the way, I ran out of space on ranking, that's why it goes down. Anyway, I'm doing this thing where I'm going to rank each individual episode as it airs, and by the very end, we'll get a definitive, opinionated thing of what I think of the series so far. So, we have these little bits of high-quality paper with Spyfall written on, and I'm going to rank it what I think. So part 2 is going to be higher than part 1 because of the development with the Master. And I just enjoyed it a bit more. I think it was more dramatic and more fun, and it's what I expect from Doctor Who. And then part 1 is going to go, because it is just the second episode of the series, that's going to go in second place. So as of now, this is what the ranking looks like. Yay! Join me next week as I put Orphan 55 somewhere on this list. Could it be there? Could it be down here? Who knows? Tune in next week for that. Or whenever I upload the review, whenever I get time. Probably I'm going to be sleeping a bit too much after this, because I'm still shattered. But oh well. So thank you very much for watching this review. I hope you have enjoyed it. Why not leave your reviews of Spyfall in the comments section below, and why not spread your theories of what the Timeless Child could possibly be in the comments section below. Could it be the Daleks? Could it be Susan? Could it be the 8th Doctor? Or could it be Jeremy Corbyn? Who knows? So thanks for watching, and I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.